Here. Vandana is a master storyteller and a curator who disrupts thoughts and builds people ecosystems and networks. She is also a TEDx speaker, a chartered accountant, and an entrepreneur. So I've been waiting for this session for a while now. So over to you, Vandana.
Okay, thank you. All right, I am just going to share a presentation with you. I hope you can see it. Can you just confirm that you can see it?
Yeah.
Sanjana? Yep.
Yeah. And if everybody can just send a message in the chat box with a thumbs up, we know that you guys can view as well.
Okay. Oops. I'm assuming that everyone's going to be able to see it. Is that okay? Can I just get going?
Yes, I think we can start, Vandana. Let's do this.
Okay. All right. I really want to try in the next 20 minutes to disrupt your mindsets and get you comfortable with being uncomfortable. Okay. So I'm just going to briefly take you through a few things. The first is I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit. And then I am going to basically tell you that you've been living a lie the whole of your life, right? Everything that you've been told is full of lies. And because it's all full of lies, there's an opportunity for you to stop all of it and really kind of think about, what is it that I want? What is it that I want to do? What is it that I believe in? And just go for it, right? So I also want to say at the outset that I am the human alarm clock. And so my aim is to disrupt your thought process, to get you thinking differently. I don't mean to cause offense, but some may take it that way. So I'm apologizing in advance for that. Okay. All right. So if you look at my history, I've done quite a lot of different things. I've worked for a number of corporates, both, I've built two companies and exited those two companies, sold those two companies. I do a lot of voluntary work. I work with entrepreneurs. I've done 2 TEDx talks. I used to chair the British Chamber of Commerce in Pune. I was on the board of the UK India Business Council. I was honoured with an OBE from the Queen. So similar, I guess, to Sanjana in that respect. I did lots of things to help the UK-India relationship. I do a lot of work with women's networks. And I've worked with the likes of, I've put proposals to and run training programs for people like Tata, HSBC, Royal Bank of Scotland, Mahindra, Genpact, etc. And so my network's really huge. This next year I will be 50. So it's kind of like I look back at the last 50 years and I think, wow. And most people look at that and think, wow. But there is another side of me that a lot of people don't know about, but I do talk about publicly. And that is that during my early years, so the line represents the age 18, right? So during my early years, I went through a lot. I was bullied by family friends. I had very bad asthma. I ended up in hospital many times with really bad asthma attacks. I had a very, very difficult relationship with my father, still do. I have a brilliant relationship with my mother, who is an amazing person, but was very submissive to my father, which made life at home very difficult. I was growing up with, being born in England, so in quite a racist the 1970s, where people spat on you and called you a Paki. So I went through all of this, and then quite horribly, I had 2 Me Too incidences, one when I was quite young and one when I was 18. So all of that happened to me before I hit 18. After 18, my life seems on paper like quite a dream. I qualified as a chartered accountant. I moved to Eastern Europe. I worked with one of the big accounting firms, left them, set up my own company. That company was bought out by a listed company. A year later, I ran the international division of a listed company. I moved to India. I set up another company, etc., etc. But while all of that was going on, there were also a number of traumas. There was a lot of difficulties and loneliness with travel. Somebody in my family had very bad clinical depression, and I had to deal with it. In my late 20s, I became quite obese. I've dealt with legal cases. I've dealt with, honestly, every kind of bias you can probably think of. I am now divorced and a single mum. I have a 16-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. So I guess the reason I wanted to show this is because people often project the successful side of their lives. But I think it's really important to acknowledge what made you who you are. And all of these incidences, as much of my successes, have made me who I am today. So what's it like? This is actually what it's like before I came on air today. It was crazy. My dog's really calm now. I'm hoping she's not going to freak out again, but she just had an anxiety attack herself. So she's very quiet now, which is really good. So this is what my life is like most of the time, and this is how I make it, right? Okay. A lot of what I've learned over the years has come from really hard personal experience and also collecting evidence, right? When I was going through all these incidences that I just showed on the previous slide, at the same time, I was trying to live what life is supposed to be like, you know, supposed to be the perfect Indian daughter, become a chartered accountant, work for a large corporation, travel with work, you know, do all of the things that are expected of us, right? Get married, have children, all of this kind of stuff. And I think in my 20s, I started to really ask myself, why are we doing this? Why do we follow these norms, these rules? And that took me to a place where I started to try and understand why we are the way we are. And there's a brilliant book that I think explains it really well. Some of you may have seen it before. It's called Sapiens, and it's by Yuval Noah Harari. And very briefly, what he does is he looks at the history of how humankind has formed. And he said that if you go back 100,000 years, there were more than 5 kind of humanoid species. There was Homo sapien, there was Homo mobilis, there was Neanderthals, etc. And we were actually the scrawniest and the thinnest and the smallest of all those species. And yet somehow we're the only one that survived. So from those 5 species, we are the ones that survived. So the question is, how did we get to the top of the food chain, right? You know, lions, tigers, elephants, everything bigger than us, stronger than us, fiercer than us. But we somehow managed to tame everyone and everything. And the question is, how did we do it? And we did it because of one thing and one thing alone. And that is our ability to get other people to believe in fictional storytelling. So you're like, what? But it's true. Think about it. Think about these 3 things. Do they really exist? Now, the third one is more controversial. I'm not going to talk about that one. I'm going to fix on the first 2, borders, right? We say we belong to India, right? But go back 10,000 years. There was no such thing as India. But yet we have pledged allegiance to this country, right? And yet if we go into space like Elon Musk's rocket did yesterday night, right? You won't see any of these borders. And yet we have these things called passports, and we have immigration papers that stop us getting somewhere else because we've been told we come from a certain country. And if we cross this border, this fictitious line that exists, we go into another country. And you know what? We all believe it. We all believe that money exists, right? But money, it doesn't come with us, and it doesn't go when we die either, right? It is a piece of paper, but we have put value on it. And because we all believe in it, it works. Think about diamonds and rubies and sapphires, right? Who told us that they are valuable? Why do people pay thousands and thousands of dollars or rupees and lakhs of rupees for these things that actually grow in mines? And actually in certain parts of the world are all over the place. It's just that somebody has managed to limit it and therefore tell us that these are valuable, right? And other things are not. And I won't really talk about God because I think it gets very very controversial. But I will bring up one statement that was said, and that was Ricky Gervais, who's a comedian in the UK. He once said that if there was a nuclear war and everyone and everything got destroyed, right? And 100,000 years later, because of evolution, humanity came up again, we would come to the same laws of physics, biology, chemistry, because these are actual things that happen. The question is, would we come to the same writing of Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, etc., etc.? Would we come to that same, you know, exactly how it was written? Would it be the same? I don't know. And I'm not going to talk about that one, but think about value and think about borders. And if you still kind of think, no, that's not true, right? What humanity was able to do, and the reason why we got to the top of the food chain, is because we got large groups of us to believe in the same thing, right? Now look at this, fact or fiction. A man can be convinced to die fighting for his nation for the promise of heaven, you know, God will reward you. A monkey cannot. If you got a whole group of monkeys together and said, if you die, you're all going to go to heaven, do you think the monkey's going to listen to you, right? So the point is, are we believing in fact or are we believing in fiction? And I'm going to argue with you that I think our minds are programmed. Think about yourself. Think about all the influences you've had since you were a baby. There's been your family, then there's been media, and then there's been society. What do? They tell you about all of these things. They tell you what is right. They tell you what is successful. They tell you what is the right way to live. So whether it's, you know, going to school, you've got to do really well at school, and then you get promoted. And then what happens, mummy? Oh, you get to the next grade. And then what happens, mummy? Oh, you just keep studying, and then you go to the next grade. You've got to get promoted. You've got to sit exams. And then what happens? This happens for 12 years, and then you've got to go to university. And then what happens, mummy? Oh, then you go to university, then you get a job. Then what happens, mummy? Oh, you get a job and you keep rising up. You keep rising up. And then you buy a house, and then you buy a car, then you get married, then you have children, and then guess what? You put your kids through the same thing. Our minds are programmed that this is the way we should run. So we spend our entire lives like hamsters on a wheel, just running and running and running. And if you sometimes wonder, why is it that old people are really bitter? They're bitter because they've been lied to for the whole of their lives and told that this is what life is like. So where do these crazy rules come from? Okay. Well, here's one interpretation. This is not the truth, but this is one interpretation. If you think about who's created these rules over time, that society has to run like this, religion should be like this, we should pray like this, we should do this, we should do that. Where have they come from? I'm going to say something incredibly controversial now. 80% of our history, and this is not a good or bad statement, this is just facts. 80% of our history has been written by men and about men. 80% of our religion has been written by men about men. 80% of science, art, and literature have been written by men about things that they're interested in, even though 50% of the population is female. Where are our female William Shakespeares? Are we really saying they never existed, right? When we think of our rich heritage, yes, we've got Devis, but if you look at what happens in the Ramayana, if you look at what happens in the Mahabharata, who are the main conversations about? And yet 50% of the population is female. Just think about it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, right? We have evolved from, in theory with evolution, we've evolved from being hunter-gatherers to who we are today. And perhaps because the men were the stronger ones, they had the louder voices. But we live in a different era now, and we've got to start changing this. And it is changing. We're starting to see female writers come up. We're seeing more things written by women. But you know what? We've been through millennia of having men do a lot of things. So we need to start changing the things that we think about. I want to give you another example. If you don't believe any of that, here's an example of what we blindly accept. when somebody sees someone like this, right, in general, and I have done this session with, I'd say, 20,000, 30,000 people over the last 10 years, right? And I show this picture and I say, stereotypically, what do you think this guy does? And people come up with tattoo artist, he's a builder, he's, you know, he's a bodyguard, or he's a, you know, one of those guys who, a bouncer, etc., right? Because we prejudge people. We have been taught that this is what people like that do in their lives. In fact, this guy is a doctor and he could potentially save your life. But what we do is we put our thoughts onto this person. And remember, your opinion about what he thinks, sorry, your thoughts on who he is and what he does are a bigger reflection on you than on him, because they're coming from your mind, right? So if you don't think that's true, think about this. Look at these gorgeous little babies, gorgeous, gorgeous little babies. Guess what? In the first 5 minutes on this planet, we decide their name, their religion, their nationality, their future path. We don't, you know, think about, are they going to be kind? Are they going to be generous? Are they going to be giving, right? We, from the moment they're born, we put them on paths, and they don't have a choice. Like you don't have a choice. You've been put on a path. And look what's happened as a result of this. As a result of this, we have this population pyramid, and this is showing how many people we've got at each level, right? And we've got females on one side and males on the other side. Look at the difference between how many females are born and how many males are born, and tell me why that's happening. Look at that. Look at the bottom level between 0 and 4. In India, we have something like 55 million girls. And look how many boys we've got. We've got about 60 million boys, or 62 million boys. Why? Because we're told that female lives aren't worth it. We're told to abort females because if you don't have a boy, who's going to look after you in your old age? Those thoughts, where are those thoughts coming from? Women are you know, before we're even born, the odds are stacked against us. But I want to say this is how it used to be. Things are changing. And the point is that you need to be the change as much as me, to make sure our future, your children's future doesn't look like this, is not skewed like this. So we don't have this situation. This is an advert from Save the Children India. 68% of victims of women are victims of domestic violence, right? And it's domestic violence that's causing it. Think about this COVID period and how many women have been locked in houses with men. And because those men are stronger than them, think about what's happened to them. Think about what happens to us from birth, right? There's a brilliant book by a woman called Deepa Narayan, and it's called Chup. It's about breaking the silence about India's women. She was a UN economist, or World Bank economist. She did surveys across India. She did focus group discussions. She talked to women. And this is what she came up with, that Indian women are trained to be silent from birth. We're trained not to exist. Think about all of these things that she's put down here. And the book is such a read, because for generation and generation, this is what we've been told. And I need you to understand, it's not just in India, it's actually across the world. Here are some examples of some things that just, sorry, they just make me laugh, right? In Japan last year, this wasn't even 10 years ago, this was last year, Japanese Labour Minister says that women are required to wear high heels at work, saying it's necessary and appropriate, after a petition was filed against this practice. How crazy is that? But this is happening. Women have to wear high heels. I mean, ridiculous. In China, they used to bind feet of women, never men, but only women. And it was practiced until the 60s. And as a result, they had deformed feet, tiny, tiny feet. The smaller your feet were, the more chance was that you would be able to get married. How crazy is that? And yet we as women accepted it. So it is time now to disrupt. I say but it's our future, right? It is time to change the way we think, and it is time to question much more. The reason we don't question is because of this. We have two bits of our brain. We have the amygdala, which is the bit that is fearful all the time of change, right? It stops us from wanting to change because it says, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, if we change something, people might not like us, or society may shun us, or etc., etc. So that's the scared bit. On the other side, though, we have this bit, the prefrontal cortex. You had that amazing woman this morning doing her Zumba. This is what gets released with your prefrontal cortex when you do meditation. When you question things calmly, you get that really beautiful feeling of chemical rush coming through you. And that's the prefrontal cortex. We need to get our prefrontal cortexes running. We need to question and challenge the people who tell us we can't do things. But you need to remember, you cannot do it overnight. Can you build a Shah Rukh Khan body or a Priyanka Chopra body in one day? The answer is no, you can't. Your brain is like a muscle. In order to get your amygdala to stop being, oh my God, I'm so scared, I'm so scared, you have to keep challenging it. You have to change your thought process. You have to question everything so your prefrontal cortex can start working. So you have to go out of your comfort zone, because that is where the magic happens, right? So how do you go out of your comfort zone? You have to keep challenging yourself and accepting. Think about all the things you've achieved in your life. At one stage, you were frightened of doing them. Now they're second nature. So you need to do more of those things. You need to do things that you don't want to do, that you find difficult, that you're intimidated by, you're upset by, or you're fearful of. You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone every day. I have survived what I've survived because every day I push myself out of my comfort zone. And I don't care if I talk to one person or I talk to an audience of 1,000 or 2,000, that's what I have to do. And believe me, there are times, because I had an intimidating father, my heart starts pounding if I have a man who is taller than me, and I'm 5'1", right? Who is taller than me saying, Vandana, you're wrong. I disagree with your view. And inside, I'm like, oh my God, it's like my dad all over again. I've got to listen. I've got to listen. No, you've got to say, I respect that you don't agree with my view, but respectfully, I disagree with yours. And the more you do that calmly, the more the other person will get agitated, but eventually will calm down. So if you want to do something that's different, if you really want to practice completely disrupting your mindset, here's some things you can do. Go upside down to mind size. And what I mean by that is really sit down and think about, what are the unwritten rules that you had from childhood that you are still following? Women can't go out late at night. Women can't wear this. And it's not just about women. Men must have the better job in the house. Men must not help in the house, or, you know, it's mainly the woman's job to help. You know, think about all the things that you were brought up with and you're still following. Look at the impact it's having on what you do and you don't do. I was absolutely terrified because I started working on these committees with these really strong men. And I realized half the time what they were saying was wrong, but I was too scared to speak up. Then I suddenly realized, Vandana, if I don't speak up, who is going to speak up? So I started to speak up, and I was deeply unpopular, and I took it. But over time, the more you take it, the more people get used to you, and they're kind of like, you know, actually, she's right. Or they say, you know, all the aunts and uncles I grew up with, when I moved abroad to Eastern Europe, they were like, oh my God, what's going to happen to her? You know, how terrible. She must have a boyfriend over there. She must have this. She must have that. Now those same people say to their grandchildren, be like Vandana, you know, go do something really different. Wow. You know, what I went through as a kid is just unbelievable. But now people see the benefit of it. So look at what it is, the impact that it's having on you, of what you will do and you won't do because of those unwritten rules. And think about, how can you change it? What do you need to do to be able to change it? Who can help you change it? And who can help hold you accountable. That's what's really important. Be a mini human alarm clock with people. Talk to people without preconceived ideas. I showed you that guy with all the tattoos and stuff. I talk to people like that every day. I talk to the street cleaners. I talk to, you know, the big guys who are like hanging around in a big group. I'll make sure that I'm safe, obviously, but I will go and have conversations because I don't agree with what they're doing. So, you know, go and talk to people without preconceived ideas. Be curious about them. And, you know, all these things, all these questions that you've built up inside yourself and you think you can't talk to about other people, you know, because they might think you're weird, or they may think, why are you thinking that? You need to know that the thoughts you're having, other people are also having. So go talk to people, find your tribe, find your communities, reach out to me, reach out to these brilliant women who are on today, right? And really start changing your thought process. If you're interested, get in touch with me, email me. I do WhatsApp groups, you know, 15 days, 15 tasks to change your mindset. If you want to be part of one of those, I'm more than happy to bring you into one of those groups. I send out something for you to watch, something for you to think about, and something for you to talk about in the group. And just see where it leads. You'll find that your brain will go in different directions. I think I'm almost out of time. I would love to answer a couple of questions if we've got time. Sanjana, please let me know. I'll stop sharing. And I hope I've helped disrupt your mind.
Most definitely, Vandana, because I feel like we've always been told that, you know, don't worry about anything, don't be afraid, just say what you feel like. But I feel like the way everything you shared with us today, that kind of makes us understand what is the genesis of that ideology. What makes
Absolutely.
you, what directs you to saying, yes, go say that, you know, do not hold it inside of you. And I feel like a lot of us have been segmented in so many labels over the years, you know, right from when we were children, we've been told, oh, you're such a cute little girl. Instead of saying, oh, you're such a smart
Exactly.
girl. And then, you know, when you go to your teenagers, you said that, like, oh, aren't you growing things yet? And oh, you're that age yet? Or, oh my God, you have acne. And then it kind of starts affecting you later on in life because you're told things again and again. But I think everything that you said today is definitely going to help us disrupt those thoughts, break free of that mindset, and then be us, be who we truly, really are.
I just want to answer one question that Sali's put up. She said, how was your journey from a student to a young entrepreneur? What's your inspiration? You know, actually, it was like, what can go wrong? I could lose 6 months of my life or a year of my life, but I can always go back to getting a job, right? So there was like, you know, if you have no fear, then you will do more. And that's where I want to get people to. I want you to have the confidence to know you can actually do anything. The only thing that's stopping you is you, not anyone else. Don't blame society. Don't blame your father. Don't blame your mother. Don't blame your friends or, you know, this, that, and the other. Just turn the finger, point it back at yourself. So I hope, Sali, that's given you an idea.
So, all right, Vandana. So we have to wrap up the session now. I hope
Sure.
everyone has taken down Vandana's coordinates. I've even, oh, there you go. You can, all right. So you can message, email us questions at host@thepinkboxindia.com. And Vandana has also put up her coordinates right there behind you. That's Vandana@VandanaSaxenaPoria.com. And you can tweet her at vporia.com. All right.
Yeah, and honestly, if any of you do want to be part of that WhatsApp group where I get you to do 15 minutes every day for 15 days, and believe me, you will see a change. If you want to be part of it, please just reach out to me. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, please do.
Right now. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Vandana. I am so happy that we hosted you today for this session. And I think let's move on to the next one now.
Sure. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Vandana.